Okay, hi guys. We are here in Perth together with our partner Anthony Spinella, who is from CNI Commercial, and they have been doing a lot of commercial property work in this part of town. I thought, since I'm here for a personal retreat, not actually work, and that's why I'm more in casuals. I thought I'll just grab Anthony along and have a chat with him about the market and have him share with us about what is going on in Perth. Now, we all know a little bit of background on Perth for those who are not familiar. I think we all know about the commodity market bringing Perth properties to quite a high, about 10, 12 years back sort of thing. Now, with the commodities market coming off, when it came off, that dragged down the whole Perth momentum as well. Obviously, jobs were lost quite significantly, unemployment went up, and property went to a doldrum, which is kind of slowed down, quiet. And the last 5 years, we haven't really seen much momentum happening over here. One of the, of course, then a lot of people have been asking, and I think it's one of those things where people have a preference for Perth, and that is why they keep asking about, so is it time to go in and buy in Perth yet? And over the last couple of years, RunningStream has been monitoring this market quite closely. We've been coming here on a few occasions to just look out and see, to gauge the how desperate developers are, how the market is developing, is there new initiative going on, and so on and so forth. And I think with the so-called slowdown in the commodity sector, what we are seeing is that we have the government is trying to change its direction, trying to turn things around, trying to create a little bit more diversity in this economy, which is a good thing. My only complaint, same with UK, with regards to London, and the similar thing that is in Perth here. The thing about Perth is its economy is so single-legged and so singularly dependent on the commodity market. And hopefully, what I'm hoping to see is that with the commodity market coming off, the whole market can go into a more diversity in terms of its industry, and then creates an economy which is more stable, more balanced, and is able to match up with some of its bigger states around here like Melbourne and Sydney. And the question is whether we are seeing that or not. And I think to look at the commodity market come back as the next catalyst to drive the market, that could take some time. In fact, that could be taking forever. Yeah. But I think the solid thing right now, and I've been pitching that for a long time, is that Perth needs to build its diversity in terms of industry. Now, one of the things that happened very quickly, that the government has been pushing and capitalizing, and in a sense is done well. If you were to search on the internet, in terms of tourism, Perth tourism certainly has taken off quite significantly, becoming one of the major industries. Hotels are big. Hotels occupancies are pretty high in and around the area. Yes. And I suspect tourism. Some may deem that tourism creates more part-time than full-time jobs. But I think that there's a lot of flow-on effect from tourism. Once people come here, especially foreigners, they would like the place. They would want to, do business in the place. They want to live in the place, and they start, getting properties and all. The trick is whether all these are actually strong enough to actually support it. So what I'm going to do now is to get Anthony to share a little bit more with us about the commercial sector over here, the office sector. How's the uptake recently, and therefore what's the job situation? What's the thing that is going to drive Perth forward, and to help us understand whether is it a good time to actually get into Perth.
Sure.
Right.
No, thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Certainly with Perth, as Dan has mentioned, the commodities are a big driving factor for our city and the way we go about it. That has come off 4 or 5 years ago, and it is now slowly starting to come to the good again. Iron ore is starting to go up, gas, oil, all going quite well at the moment, and they are starting to now grow and become bigger. BHP, Rio Tinto, or Chevron, all the big operators are taking back space and actually employing more people and starting to get projects that were delayed for the last year or 2 years. They're now starting to put them back on the
is that right?
on the agenda and back on the radar.
So they are the ones that is taking out some of the office space, additional office space.
Exactly right. So they were trying to lease space before because they made a lot of people redundant, made the spaces smaller. But now they've gone back the other way and said, no, look, we're going to start project A, B and C, so we're going to start getting ourselves ready and we want this space back for ourselves now.
So they must have certain forecasts thinking that, you know, the demand for iron ore and coal is going to come back, and is the way they're doing it?
Yeah, I think so. You know, there is obviously still a demand for what they do. They probably went a bit too far in terms of, you know, cutting down their costs and cutting down their people.
Okay.
But now they've realised that where we're at is a good starting point to start actually again and keep going. We've also had, don't forget, we've also had a state election here in March.
Yes.
So there's a change of government.
Yes.
Change of government after, 12 years. So now the new government is a lot more responsive and receptive to business and wanting things to grow. So that has also created a little bit of impetus through the city and got people more excited about doing things, which is a good thing as well.
Okay.
So in terms of, you know, where the city is at the moment, we also built 7 new buildings, office buildings, at the same time that all this was going downhill. So you had an oversupply of buildings and an undersupply of people all at the same time. That is now stabilised. There's no new buildings forecast for another 4 years, so the supply shall remain basically at the same level as it is now.
Okay.
And it's now just a matter of uptaking all that space. So you know, your natural oil and gas, iron ore, those commodity price people are continuing to use the space. But we've also had an influx of tourism related businesses. There are several new hotels being built and just finished through the CBD and Northbridge and East Perth and West Perth as well. So tourism, as you said, is going to be not a new frontier, but it's going to be a bigger frontier than it has been in the past.
I see.
We have a lovely...
Okay, I mean, a couple of questions, I mean, that's on my mind. I mean, great to know that the PHP and all those guys coming back in, because they kind of pull up fairly fast in the last round. The hotels, are they built by local guys or this is all done by international players out there?
No, there's an interesting article I can get off my desk to show you, but there are, I think, out of the 7 or 8 new hotels going up, 5 of them are from international players.
Okay.
So there's Singaporean money, Malaysian money, coming in, Hong Kong money coming in and developing these properties. Okay. So that is one thing that's going on. Also, we've had 2 new schools going into the city. We've never had a school in the city before.
We've had one. Okay.
We've had one on the fringe of the city before, but we've never had one in the actual city. So,
which two?
There's one of the old buildings has been converted to a college now.
Okay.
It's an Anglican school college.
Okay.
And then just recently, I think it was January this year, a secondary school also popped up in the CBD as well. So that's something new and exciting that we've not had.
Okay.
And now also one of the creating a campus.
Well, okay.
So so that is also now creating more students and younger people coming through the city as well, which does create the vibrancy for the bars and restaurants and the entertainment lifestyle.
Okay, so well, that's interesting. I mean, you know, Perth never had the university was never located in the city area, unlike the other, you know, unlike Melbourne or Sydney. Kind of thing, and that's one of the problems, because the city doesn't get that vibrancy in terms of consumers, in terms of young consumers and all that. So that's quite a changing trend. The whole tourism education sector, I thought could be pushed harder in terms of balancing of the economy. Do you see is there any major effort coming from the government in that sector? Because that's something that I've been harping on for the last, I don't know how many long years. It's just Perth, like I said, is nearest to every single Asian city, and yet it enjoys the least, of all and its weather is
the weather
much better than
the outdoor activities,
than the East Coast and all that, and generally most Asian people, whether from Malaysia, Singapore, all that, likes Perth, but the only complaint is that the city isn't vibrant enough, and there's generally a lack of effort to actually drive that vibrancy in the city, and that's why they all run to Melbourne and Sydney and all that. Judging by flight time, like by the weather, technically
it should be much better here.
Yeah, it should have been. Right. It should have been the flagship state of Australia in terms of Asian penetration, but it's not.
No, it hasn't been, and that's the previous government didn't place much emphasis on tourism, and that has obviously stalled our city quite drastically. So that, there was a late push in the last 6 months of their term to get tourism back on the agenda.
Kind of late.
Too late for them. The new government has followed through with that, so they're pushing that quite hard, and hence the reason why there are so many new hotels going up in the city. There's a lot more apartment complexes also going up in the city as well. Okay. So one of the other factors we have is we don't have a lot of density in terms of people actually living in the city. Most people come into the city, work, and then go home to the sort of suburbs. Now they're encouraging more and more apartments in the CBD. And I think we have something like 3,000 apartments coming up in the next 3 to 4 years. So that will create a lot more vibrancy in the city as well. When you've got students, and then you've also got people living in the city and working in the city, it all leads to much more vibrancy.
Okay. Okay. Now on that, I was just going through some of the news and all that, and I came across one that was saying that we're gonna have 60 new buildings all across Perth, and the cranes are going back up again. 60, is that a little bit over enthusiastic? And I've always feared that when the international guys get into play, the thing is they are driven by a lot of other factors besides besides local factors like affordability, demand and so on. Much of the demand they are thinking of selling to other people, outside of this country, and therefore I don't really put it this way. If the demand or the construction, bulk of it is driven by the overseas guys, I tend to be a little bit more skeptical. So 60 buildings going up, I mean, you think that's too much? You think that's...
I think it's over exaggerated, that's for sure.
Okay.
I think where that article is coming from is 60 buildings in the pipeline, but how many of them actually make it to development is the next question. Okay. I would say probably less than a quarter of those.
Less than a quarter
would make it to development stage.
I see.
There's just not enough demand at the moment for those apartments, like you say. Overseas investors coming in to buy these apartments. The rules changed recently for overseas investors, so it's making it a little bit more difficult. The unfortunate thing is, Australia is a very big country, and Perth, whilst we're miles away from Sydney and Melbourne, we get lumped in the same
it should not
basket
be a
as those two. That's exactly right. It shouldn't be one size fits all. But Sydney and Melbourne are going very well at the moment, and prices have gone up something like 30% in the last few years, which has created flow-on effects to Perth, because even though we haven't gone up by as much, we're treated in the same way as what they are by the federal government.
That's right.
So, benefits have changed, grants have changed, and it just made it a lot harder to make developments move forward and actually get developed.
Okay. Yeah. I see. Okay. Now, on the other hand, I mean, what's the general Australian perspective of all those apartments coming up in the city? I mean, is it an Aussie thing, or is this just a lot of foreign developers that are driving that momentum, and foreign buyers driving that momentum? I mean, particularly for the Perth city right now. I mean, Yeah.
Like if the apartments are located in the correct spot, they are actually selling quite well.
Okay.
You know, we have a few local developers that have been doing it now for about 10, 12 years, and they do very well with all their apartment complexes that they build.
Okay.
They find the right location and away they go, and they usually get them sold fairly quickly because now they've got the reputation and the name. The local investors.
Local
exactly
investors.
right. Yes,
Okay.
local investors and local owner occupiers.
Okay. Okay.
So they have got the track record now, and they are developing it. Now the younger generations fully embrace the apartment concept and the apartment living life cycle. It is much easier to live in an apartment 5 minutes from town and catch a train and the bus everywhere, rather than buying your own home and backyard. That's the traditional Aussie method. That is 45, 50 minutes away by car.
Yeah.
So, you know, south, north, east, wherever it might be. So the younger generations understand that the time and money they save on car costs and being in the car, it works better to be closer into town in a smaller apartment. And they don't necessarily need the backyard because you've got all the ovals and amenities. I mean, you can walk outside, you go to 10 different restaurants, cafes, bars, you've got the oval, another oval, so it all works quite well.
But the key is, I mean, to drive the apartment demand, the key is, you know, how critical the city is for jobs. I mean, traditionally for Perth, the jobs, you know, it's not like the bulk of the jobs are in the city. It's in and all around Perth, and it's too scattered.
Yes.
So one of the things is that, you know, if we start to see more momentum coming into the Perth city in terms of the office take-up as well as the jobs, then that would drive the you know, the younger people to actually live in the city itself.
Yes.
And then the city become critical, become central to everybody's lifestyle. So traditionally, what we have seen is that, you know, we've seen a radial model whereby we see, you know, across some of these more dense cities where, you know, you got Melbourne, you got Sydney, and prices tend to radiate out of the, depending on the distance from the city itself. So it goes in circles. Right? Perth doesn't have that. I mean, I used to, 5 years ago when I was giving talks about Australian property in general, I used to tell people that Perth doesn't have that model because the city is so forgettable in a sense, you know, back in those days. But if we see the city becoming more central and more concentrated, then definitely the apartment market needs to take off, because one of the things that doesn't drive a lot of vibrancy is because there's no density, and without that density, you can't have businesses, you know, restaurants and all that. You know, they're just sparse and located everywhere. But it will be interesting to see how Perth will take that spot. Now, on the other hand, you know, from an investment angle, just picking up property, and you know that we do more than that, but just from an investment, just from a residential property perspective, what do you think is a great buy right now? And we're not buying because I guess the theme of buying in Perth is not so much like, hey, the boom is coming. Nah, it's not going to happen. I think the theme of buying in Perth is at a good price point right now, which we can take advantage of if you're looking at, you know, putting something here, if you like the city. You know, what are your thoughts? Buying a house, like you say, 45 minutes down south, or buying an apartment in the city area and in the immediate South Perth and, you know, Mount Lawley area. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly, you know, the way Perth is going at the moment with the, you know, the Elizabeth Quay project in the city, all the new hotels, a couple of new schools, the university talking about going there. The city's starting to get more of that vibrancy that you were talking about before, and more of that density on a 24-hour basis. So buying an apartment in the city is still a good investment. They're very good pricing at the moment in terms of that. Anywhere in and around your established entertainment precincts, such as your Mount Lawley, Leederville, South Perth, a little bit of East Perth, Maylands, all those areas that are traditional established entertainment areas where you've got lots of bars, restaurants, good amenities, close to the river. They always do well. The Applecross Ardros precinct is starting to get a lot of traction at the moment. There are some new apartment complexes going up in Ardros at the moment. It's 2 train stops from the city, right on the river. You've got fantastic amenities all around there. Very good price points, very good property to be looking at in that area at the moment. So that's one area we like going forward. The Applecross, Mount Pleasant, Ardros area. We think there's a lot of opportunity there, and also along even further out, if you're somewhere near the train line, especially Coburn at the moment, seems to be getting a lot of activity. One of the football teams here has moved down there with their training base. They've set up a new water slide and water park activity area for the children. There's a big entertainment complex going up there in the next couple of years, so it's starting to get a lot more of that, and a rather large shopping centre there too.
Coburn is interesting. It's almost just thriving on its own outside.
It's its own little,
own little enclave kind of
activity.
thing.
Exactly right. And that's a bit like what Perth is. You've got Coburn, you've got Joondalup, you've got the city. A lot of these, spread out little activity zones. Which does create that problem that you said before.
That's right. One last question before we call it a day. Now, one of the interesting thing, and maybe because I'm just not exposed to it. At least I don't see as much momentum. Now, when it comes to the other cities like in the Eastern Coast, what we have seen is like they go from house and land, and then as density increase, they go into townhouses. And from townhouses, they move into, it justifies when prices go up to a certain point, when townhouses hit about 700,000, 800,000, it justifies bringing in the apartments because obviously construction costs. I mean, if townhouses are going at 400,000, you build an apartment which is, 500,000, and it doesn't make sense at all. And there's sort of these townhouses that bridge the gap between houses and apartments, and that allows the price to flow, and then gradually density to increase as well. I don't see a lot of townhouses projects in Perth. Is it me that I'm not looking at the right places, or Perth seem to go like houses and then boom, it's apartments. Kind of.
You might be looking in the wrong areas.
There
are certainly a lot of apartments a lot of townhouses in the Perth area. A lot of the older established suburbs with the larger blocks have been subdivided now into 2 or 3 townhouses.
So it's very small subdivisions. I mean, any major developer goes in and do a 40 townhouse or 30 townhouses?
No, nothing like that, no. It's either 40 or 50 apartments on the one complex, or 3 or 4 townhouses, maybe maximum 6 townhouses.
That's the interesting part. I mean, that's where the big developers then don't get involved, because it's more small scale, personal. The average man on the street doing a subdivision on his land. And that's what I mean. I mean, in Queensland or in Melbourne and Sydney, we see this amalgamation of maybe 3 houses, and this guy buys it up and then hacks it into 15, 20 townhouses, and that justifies. The scale justifies, or it could be a green side as well, but the scale justifies a significant developer to be in play, to participate. I mean, if you're a developer of certain size, there's no point you going build 3 townhouses. I mean, complete waste of time.
No.
So at least 20 before you get out of bed. Preferably 40.
Well, it's going to be economies of scale.
It's economy of scale.
So the problem with all of that is our residential codes, our zoning codes don't allow a lot of that in a lot of the suburbs. So the maximum you'll get will be 3, 4, or 5 or 6 townhouses on the one block. You may buy 3 blocks in a row, and then triple it, so you have 18 townhouses in a row. That is a possibility, but it's not. If you're doing that, you build 70, 80 apartments instead for the same sort of cost and returns.
But do you think there's a market for it? I mean, such a townhouse concept versus apartment. Generally, I mean, across the other, for example, I mean, in the other states, there is a significant townhouses are maybe a, you know, if you're buying an apartment which is a 2-bed apartment, for example, for a 2-bed apartment, and you're buying it around 550 for a 2-bed apartment, the townhouse tend to be around 800.
Yep.
Yeah, then the houses will go like 1.2, 1.5. That sort of price gap in between.
Yes.
You know, and because of because of the zoning as well, and sometimes it just doesn't allow the apartments to be built. I mean, you see, you know, within the so-called code as well as the market demand and all that, do you see a market for this sort of houses? We're talking about. Obviously, we're not talking about small ones. I mean, we're talking about 220 square meters built up across 2 levels. The land is about 120, 150 square meters, sort of thing.
There probably will be more and more of a push towards that type of product going forward. Perth, as you know, is a long, sprawling city. You know, from Mandurah, 80 kilometres down the south, up to Yanchep, 80 kilometres in the north. So you've got 160 kilometres of coastline there. It's all spread out. And that's why the younger people want to come more and more closer to the city in apartments, because they don't want to live that far away. So as more and more infill happens, you will see more and more of those type of developments coming on board, because you'll still get some of the older generations would like a little bit of a backyard and a little bit of a grassed area, so they will not buy an apartment, but they will buy a townhouse.
Okay, I mean, that could be something that we want to explore with you as well. I mean, in terms of our development arm. All right, I think we will stop here, and thank you for joining us, for those who are online, and for those who are not. Usually, you know, our videos don't get a lot of people attending, but I noticed that after that we do get a lot of people watching after. And if you are one of those, thank you for watching it, and you know, hopefully we don't know what's up next week yet. We'll let you know. And thanks, Anthony, for being online with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.